Hi, my name is Munish Agrawal, and I manage a large go-to-market relationship with one of our top strategic partners. With me today, I have Jonathan Bauer from Deloitte, who leads the AWS Alliance relationship in the US. The aphorism, "a rising tide lifts all boats," is associated with the idea that as AWS cloud revenue grows, there's intrinsic benefits to all partners in the ecosystem. When I first started work at AWS in Jan 2016, approximately 5 years ago, I didn't have a deep understanding of the AWS partner landscape, but I knew and I wanted to help thousands of customers transform their businesses. In my role, I had a front row seat to see companies leverage AWS services in large global customers in nearly every imaginable industry. From my front row seat, I saw how companies were innovating to remain relevant to their customers. I love this quote from Andy Jassy as it showcases our belief that working with and selling with our partners is foundation to the success of AWS. In today's session, I plan to cover some best practices and tips on how to effectively go to market with AWS, how to co-sell with AWS, how to navigate the various different programs we have, how to build trust with all key stakeholders. And we also will get to hear from one of our strategic partners, Deloitte Consulting, and Jonathan Bauer. For me, as a partner, it is really important to pick a specialty. How you as a partner differentiate yourself from others is critical. Some partners specialize in migrations, others have deep connect skills, or have an SAP on AWS practice. You can always grow from the specialty, but it's really important to start somewhere. Think about working with the AWS field. What is your pitch going to be to the account manager, the sales manager? The best way to earn trust is to have a specialty and then to show wins in that specialty. We have great mechanisms where we can share partner successes internally within the company. I'll be talking about that as we go forward, in addition to how you can seed yourself as a partner with our field. AWS also has a rich competency program. Many partners continue to raise the bar through their participation in this competency program. AWS competencies are granted to APN partners who have demonstrated a technical proficiency and a proven customer record with public references. So for me, as you choose your specialty, it's also important to see if AWS have competencies in that specialty and to get the competency. As you initially develop what you're going to specialize in, I would also like you to think through the type of business relationship you'd like to have with Amazon. Some think that they'd like to have an ISV relationship, whereas others want a hands-on keyboard or technical relationship. Some do only strategy consulting. Others are managed service providers. And so while these are all important, our mutual customers are asking us for looking at other ways to partner as well, outside of just AWS. And so would you like to work with our Alexa team or our advertising team or our Just Walk Out team? So to me, it's important to understand the broader relationship you would like to have with Amazon. Coupled with that, depending on the size of the relationship, it is really important to have stakeholder alignment. And in today's world, it's a little bit easier to have that stakeholder alignment because people are working virtually, so you can set up meetings a lot easier. And so for me, the definitive and introductory meeting with the senior most levels, once you've established your specialty and you've had some success, it's really important to get that set up. Along with that, of course, is to have a strategy, a really well-aligned go-to-market strategy with working collaboratively with your AWS counterparts. My favorite line, how can you bowl a strike if you can't see the pins? It is critical to set targets and joint targets with AWS. While we'll always have a balanced scorecard and there'll be a ton of different metrics, for me, there's 4 key metrics that we're looking at. Number 1, how much money do you want to make as a partner? Second, how much money you'd like to make for AWS in any one fiscal year. Third, how many people are you going to have trained and certified on our platform? And an increasing focus for us in 2020 and years beyond is partner-originated deals. It's a key focus for us to work with our partners on those partner-originated deals. While there are other metrics, and those could be applicable, it is important to track these metrics on a recurring basis, either monthly, and while some of these goals seem difficult and maybe aspirational if you set some high goals, I can tell you from my experience in working with AWS and our partner ecosystem for 5 years, the pace of adoption and the customer needs are such, the demand is such, that it's really easy to achieve those really difficult goals. It's important, by the way, while you're doing the strategy and you're building that sales strategy, is to have some key sales play and some campaigns that you would use to generate pipeline. Another one of my favorite quotes, if we start a sales cycle together, there's a high likelihood we'll end it together. So after you've built consensus amongst the teams and you've set the strategy and you've set some goals, the focus shifts to the ground game. And to me, this is the most critical aspect of co-selling with AWS. It is really important at this point to understand the AWS sales structure. So the way we're segmented, we have an enterprise segment, we have a greenfield segment, we have a digital native business segment, and also a startup segment. There's also an increasing number of industry verticals like financial services, telecommunications, oil and gas. So it's really important to understand that. And it's also important to understand who you're going to be working with, who you're going to be co-selling with at AWS. So we have teams of partner success managers. You may be interacting with a partner development manager or solution architects from a partner organization, and or also from the account teams, account managers and sales managers. The ground game includes leveraging programs like ACE, which is the APN Customer Engagement Program. Through this program, partners such as yourself can share opportunities which are vetted by humans at AWS, and those opportunities get put into our sales force. And to me, this is the easiest and fastest way to get the account manager's attention. And of course, we look for high quality opportunities where our partners have a good batting average with that particular account. And so it's equally important to have targeted accounts and to prioritize these accounts. And so vetting of accounts should be collaborative in nature. Priority should be given to the accounts where you have deep relationships, where it's something that truly both organizations want to proactively work in. The ability for the target account for you as a partner to invest and for AWS to be in a position to invest as well in that particular account. And then, of course, setting up account planning sessions and working in those small set of accounts. It's important to get consensus, to jointly develop a strategic execution plan, and consideration should be given to what opportunities are currently in flight in the account, what opportunities you want to build proactive proposals for. And so it's a very collaborative kind of approach with AWS as you're building your pipeline. Another one of my favorite quotes, there are no elevators to success. One has to take the stairs. And so I have a rule for myself that when there's an opportunity to get our teams together, I try to encourage my teams to get to meet with the partner counterparts within 24 to 48 hours. This is what keeps the lights on in any business relationship. This is what earns trust in a business relationship. We also have mechanisms in place where teams can go deeper into one account and they can plan proactive meetings either around an opportunity or just around an account. And when you bring teams together, it is important to come prepared for that conversation, to talk about past projects, to talk about current opportunities, to talk about what is the competition doing in that account, and what kind of relationships do you have in these accounts. And so working closely with the partner success managers in the field is critical, where we're really highly motivated and focused on helping you close your partner originated deals. Earlier, I discussed ACE. We also have mechanisms where we feed opportunities back to you as a partner through that same ACE mechanism. And so you should always look at that as well. Once the opportunity is identified, there are several AWS programs to leverage to jointly pursue these opportunities. While it can be daunting, on the slide I show a bunch of different programs, and we do constantly evolve our funding mechanisms. You should work closely with the AWS representative and or your partner success managers or your development managers to best understand which program best meets the particular customer's needs or the particular opportunity needs. While this slide showed some of the programs, it is important to note that we at AWS are customer obsessed and we think for the long term. And so for most cases with a strong business case, we do have the ability to say yes, to invest, to win business. Some of my favorite programs, I love the solution provider program. That's for your managed services or your reseller business. I also love leveraging partner opportunity acceleration funds, known as POA funds, and we typically use those investments for proof of concepts for customers. And one of the largest, most well-known funded program is the MAP program. One of my favorite programs to leverage. So those are just a few of my favorite AWS programs. Again, please work with your partner success managers or your partner development managers or your appropriate AWS representative to understand which program best meets your needs or the customer needs or the opportunity needs. And note, it's important to also share what you as a partner are willing to invest to make that customer successful or accelerate that opportunity. Positive energy is a force multiplier. Sharing success via good news stories, via public references, via press releases is what is important to the field. And so it is also important for your own internal organization. I like to ensure there's at least one good news story that I'm sharing internally every week. This is what really fuels and makes the relationship relevant and top of mind for key stakeholders. Now look, the good news doesn't have to be just with AWS. It also could be shared just internally within your organization. And so I see three kind of levels. One is either just internally. The second is sharing that news and that win with AWS. But of course, the best and the ultimate is making that customer a public reference and sharing that news publicly in the marketplace. And so some tips for me: every win should have an internal good news story shared. Every customer should be asked if they would be a public reference. And look, many of our partners leverage press releases and do press releases. One tip is to always have a customer quote in that press release. And there's a high likelihood that we as AWS would provide a quote for one of your press releases. And so these are some of the tips. Building the connected tissue and building trust, for me, is important. And it's important to build that connected tissue. And there's different mechanisms I've used to do this. And one of the mechanisms is, of course, having a recurring cadence. And so if your relationship is large, you might have weekly check-ins. You certainly would have monthly business reviews and quarterly business reviews with key stakeholders. But if you're a smaller partner, providing periodic updates on the deals that you're working on or the projects that you're currently engaged in. And as you have more success, that cadence can grow and you can have more frequency in your touch point and interactions with Amazon. This slide for me, for all the tennis fans, Novak Djokovic is the top player in the world and Rafael Nadal is the number 2 player in the world. Who gives them this seeding? They don't go around seeding themselves. It's the ATP that gives them the seeding. And so while we don't seed our partners or we don't rank our partners, but there is an easy way to get seeded. And that's to consistently win business and share that win broadly in a public fashion. There are also third parties that seed you, as many of our partners leverage Gartner and other mechanisms which kind of seed partners. But for me, again, winning is the best strategy, and winning and sharing that win is what seeds you. At this point, I'd like to introduce Jonathan Bauer, who will discuss his journey at Deloitte Consulting. So Jonathan, take it over.
Thanks, Manish, and it's great to be with you all here today. Deloitte and AWS is in our 5th year working together as go-to-market partners. And in 2021, Deloitte is looking to pass over $1 billion in revenue globally. And we are influencing very considerable ARR along the way. It's been an amazing journey. It's been an incredible opportunity to innovate and do great things for and with our clients. I fundamentally agree with Manish's comments. I'd like to focus on 2 of the points he made. What is the difference between an SI and a go-to-market partner, and why is that an important distinction? And what are the key successes? What are the keys to success working with AWS? So first, are you an SI or a go-to-market partner, and why does it matter? First off, let me be clear. Both are very important to AWS. And the starting point for both is the same, and we heard Manish talk about it. I like to use the words or ask the question, what is your superpower? As you all know, AWS has thousands of partners today. So why are you unique? Why are you different? Why will the AWS field call on you to help them deliver for a client? So what's the difference between an SI and a go-to-market partner? I think it's pretty simple. First, for an SI, to keep it simple, an SI implements AWS services without needing much support or engagement with AWS on whatever it is that you deliver. You implement their services. You might be an outstanding migration partner leveraging Cloud Endure. Or you might help customers migrate databases and data warehouses using Aurora and Redshift. But when it comes to the work that you do, you don't often need to engage with AWS. A go-to-market partner, on the other hand, is about co-creating, building something with AWS. I frequently use the equation 1 + 1 is greater than 100 million. It's about coming together to build something that neither of you have to offer by yourselves, but you build something, take it to the market, and it drives revenue for both of you. IP is frequently involved. If you are bringing it as the partner, you will focus on integrating it into the solution and retaining your rights. It may also be the case that you co-develop IP with AWS along the way, and it will be important to understand at the end of the engagement who owns that IP. Why is it important to identify to AWS whether you're an SI or a go-to-market partner, and to articulate your superpower? And actually, it's important to AWS and you. A couple of points. First, Manish talked about building relationships within AWS and finding executive alignment. Depending upon whether you're an SI or a go-to-market partner, you need different relationships. If you're going to build something together and market it together, you need relationships within marketing. You don't necessarily need those if you're an SI. Also, identifying your superpower identifies competencies that you may need to pursue and achieve so that your brand is not only public within AWS, but it's also out on the AWS site telling clients the areas that you focus on. And then lastly, just as an example, it may begin to identify which accounts within that AWS focuses on you want to engage with in the marketplace with AWS. Munish mentioned various investment programs that AWS makes available to their partners and to all of their partners. Both SIs and go-to-market partners have access to them. And as I said at the beginning, identifying your superpower with AWS account teams is always important so that they know what you do and when they should call you. So the second point I'd like to focus on are 7 quick keys to success in engaging with AWS. Number one, and probably most important, is around cultural alignment. It drives good field engagement. You should be aware of AWS's and Amazon's leadership principles. I will focus on one, customer obsession. It drives their go-to-market behavior. All right? They care about client success and they care about the long-term relationship they have with their clients and your clients. It is very important that you bring that same set of principles. Number two, I call it poking the bear. Okay? At the end of the day, this builds trust and confidence within AWS for what you do. And what do I mean? When you bring a good idea to them, when you poke the bear, if they like what they hear, they are going to engage and engage quickly. You need to be ready to go on the journey with them. You don't want them to pass you up. If you do that well, they'll love engaging with you and they'll continue to invest with you. Number three, delivering with quality and distinction. It builds confidence in what you do. I use the saying that you're only as good as your last project in this business, right? And it is incredibly important to AWS that they feel that you are going to deliver well on behalf of your mutual client. Number four, learning the AWS organization and how to navigate it is very important. Why? It makes you more efficient, and you have to ask fewer questions of AWS when trying to engage. By the way, it's a complicated organization, all right? It's very large, it's global. It will take some time, but it'll be important to your ongoing success. Next, building your brand within AWS. It brings business. It tells the field when to reach out to you. Achieving competencies is one way of doing that. Munish mentioned wind wires. When the field sees the successes that you have brought to bear, they get a sense for when they should reach out to you. Number six, act as a partner. Engage with them. All right? It'll build trust in your go-to-market activities. And lastly, continue to innovate. As you all know, AWS is always innovating. They are always challenging themselves. They appreciate it more so when their partners are doing the same. It will make you a very intriguing and valuable partner to them. So that to me is sort of a discussion on 2 of the important points that Munish mentioned. We have tried to embrace all of what I just shared with you, and we're very appreciative. And I believe AWS is also very appreciative of the relationship that we have built over the last 5 years. So Munish, I thank you for inviting me to join you here today, and I will give it back to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was great. And if you want to learn more about what Jonathan's done with Deloitte Consulting, he's actually published, and there's a press article on CRN where you can learn more about the Deloitte AWS relationship. So, Jonathan, can you give us an example of how you've sold successfully with AWS?
Sure, Munish. I'll actually go back to the early days of the relationship with AWS, and we'll carry it forward to today. So I would say 2.5 years ago, I sat actually in the AWS offices, and we were pursuing a piece of work for a large broadcast company here in the US. And there was going to be some work that we wanted to engage AWS in helping us deliver. And so there were a lot of complications about the deal, but we all sat in the room, we figured it out, we delivered successfully, and the account teams got to know each other during that opportunity. And fast forward now 2 or 3 years, and over the course of the last, I think, about 3 months, AWS actually became aware of a large opportunity at the same company. And this time they turned it around and they asked Deloitte if we could support them in the delivery. And we figured out roles and responsibilities. And as of about 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, we started delivering, work for the same company again. Totally different topic, totally different space within the company. But I think it shows the value of establishing the chemistry between the account teams, even when there's not a deal in play. And also the fact that we both carry this long-term view of the relationship with the client and how that is so very important as we take our business forward.
Fantastic. You also mentioned the go-to-market relationship Deloitte has with AWS. Can you share one or two approaches for some key plays with AWS that you are currently running with?
Sure. So I'll highlight one. All right. I think in your comments you mentioned SAP as one of the things that is important to AWS. So let me call something out on that front. So everybody knows that SAP is an enormous platform used globally, and for over 20 years, Deloitte has been involved in implementing SAP, and we're well recognized globally for our capabilities. Moving that app and all of its data to the cloud is a complicated endeavor. All right, and and the movement to move SAP to cloud is accelerating. So what we talked to you about was how do we build a solution that takes advantage of our industry background and knowledge, as well as our SAP capabilities, to build a solution set which is a combination of accelerators and methods and IP to go after this market and do our best to win more than our fair share. So one of the accelerators that we have built, we have labeled Kinetic Finance. As you might guess, because we're such clever marketing people, it's focused on the finance function, and its initial focus is to get them off their legacy ERP into HANA, focused on the CFO's organization. All right, and so we have built accelerators to not only move the data and the application more quickly than would, I think, traditionally be done in the market. And we've also looked at how we can integrate other cloud native services, other AWS services, to bring the CFO and their organization more value out of the move, as opposed to simply migrating to HANA. So through the process, we took advantage of discount program. We take advantage of discount programs. We are encouraging the AWS field to talk to their clients about Kinetic Finance, and if they have a client that's interested, to reach out to us. We are doing the same. All right. And when it comes to the delivery, we may leverage each other's resources depending upon specific client needs. All right. And I guess the last thing I would add, sort of in the name of customer obsession, migrating the workload to cloud is important. It's valuable. But if we can successfully educate the client or work with the client, they may already know how, to incorporate other services that haven't historically been available or enable us to drive value that wasn't easily achievable before, that's a bonus. And my favorite example of that conversation would be if you're doing SAP supply chain work, there's an AI/ML service called Forecast. It drives inventory management. It's my understanding that the Amazon distribution centers use this software to manage their inventory. One could argue that's one of the more complex inventory management problems in the world. And so if we can embed Forecast within our SAP supply chain implementations, it just brings more value to the client at the end of the day. So that's some of what we try to do when we work together with you in the SAP space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I recall, I think y'all did a press release, Feb 2017, on going to market with SAP on AWS, and then after that, you also did, I think, a Safe Passage press release, last reInvent, and then most recently Kinetic Finance. So what I love about this is just seeing how you are evolving and innovating specifically just within one specialty that we discussed earlier as an SAP on AWS. So thank you for that. One last question. Can you expand on your remarks where you shared you're only as good as your last project?
Sure. It's both very simple to discuss it. It's probably harder to implement it. As I mentioned earlier, I sort of walk around with this saying that you're only as good as your last project. It's short and sweet. I guess the genesis of that, I had a very long-standing client that I personally worked with for over 12 years. And somewhere around year 8, we had done great work together for 7 or 8 years. And then somewhere around year 8, we had a project that started to go a little bit sideways. And we owned a part of the issue that was out there. And what was interesting to me was how quickly all of the great work that you have done historically can sometimes be forgotten. Okay, everybody makes mistakes. But what I also learned coming out of this is that we very quickly, we owned the mistakes we made. We made the client whole on what had happened. And by the way, there's frequently issues, on the other side as well. So we, without trying to point fingers, we explained, both sides of the situation. And the client very quickly engaged in the conversation because it was a very transparent, open conversation of what we both needed to do in order to rectify the situation. And so we had to rebuild our credential, not rebuild, but we had to re-earn it, okay? And sure enough, what is it? It's almost 9 years since that time. We still have a relationship with this client, and we still do great work with them every year. So it was really fascinating to me just how important it is day in and day out to do everything you can to keep quality high and never let your client down and make them whole when you've got a mistake that happened on your watch. So it's been successful, and now I share that with all of our engagement teams as they engage in the work that they are doing.
Well, thank you, JB. In closure, I'd like to say 2 things. One is thank you for your continued business sponsorship for the Deloitte AWS relationship, and number 2, thank you for taking the time to educate our partners today on how to successfully co-sell with AWS. Appreciate your support.
Manish, it was my pleasure. I thank you for the invitation, and I thank you for allowing me to share the story.
Thank you.